but to our regular Thursday commentator, Barnaby Joyce, Nationals frontbencher and former Deputy Prime Minister. Barnaby Joyce, thank you so much for joining me. So, the opposition now, you're now calling for an independent inquiry into why Albanese was not told for 9 days about the caravan of explosives until he read it in the paper. Now, I'm told that he wasn't told because police weren't even sure at the time there was a real bomb plot, since no detonator was with the explosive and the caravan had been dumped by a roadside for weeks. Is that an excuse for not telling the Prime Minister?
No, it's not. Gosh knows, I've been Deputy Chair of the National Security Committee, and the Prime Minister is the Chair. It's the boss. And the boss should know everything that's going on. And the boss should know about it, whether it's a possibility. They should know. This is an incredible event. If a caravan full of explosives was to go off in the middle of Sydney, it would make the annals of our history books as one of the biggest terrorist attacks, well, probably the biggest terrorist attack that Australia has ever experienced. I was trying to consider other ones, maybe in Nandamargo, which some may remember, way back in the 70s, a bomb in a garbage bin, but this one, it would be horrendous. So, of course, the Prime Minister should know. And if he didn't know for whatever reason, that in itself is of great concern. It goes to the question of, has he got his finger on the pulse? Is this person across his brief? If the head of the National Security Committee is unaware of the potential of a massive terrorist attack on home soil, then yes, that is a concern.
I would have thought so, but I wonder whether the fault lies down the chain, with the AFP or something like that, and Chris Minns rather than with the...
Let's find out.
Just
let's find
Prime
out.
Minister. I don't know. Well, let's find... Well, good.
Yeah, well, let's find out.
I'm also worried, Barnaby, to be honest. You've been calling, or the opposition's been calling for ages for mandatory sentences for hate speech acts, encouraging violence and that kind of thing. Violence, I don't know, these days can be mental violence for all we know. One day that some judge will say that. Mandatory, I mean, I wonder why we need laws like this now, the toughest laws we've ever had against this kind of thing. The government was saying yesterday, the toughest laws ever. Why we need them now when we didn't need them a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago? It seems to me our free speech and the freedom of judges to set sentences they see fit is being trampled on simply because the government didn't apply the laws that are existing already, and nor did judges or whatever. They didn't do their job, and now we're paying.
Well, I concur with the concerns that some have, but superior to that is the issue that this fire of filth, which is typical fascism, anti-Semitism, has got out of the pit and is now in the grass, and it's burning itself around the paddock and up the hill, and therefore more pronounced actions have to be taken to try and put it out. If these things are obviously correlate very closely with this anti-Semitism that we're seeing, burning of synagogues, this in Australia, burning of synagogues, the prospect of massive terrorist attacks, obviously the intimidation of Jewish people in Australia, and what has to be seen as an overwhelming desire by the Australian people to put this filth on fire out. And this is part of that process.
Yeah, but there are already laws against everything you just said. We already have laws on that.
Well, if at some stage in the future you find a court that goes rogue, then I suppose that's a thing for a future parliament to consider. But this has to be seen as a clarion call across Australia that our fight against fascism was supposed to have finished at the end of the Second World War, and the thought that we have now got it back in the realms. Remember, there was a neo-Nazi march on the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. Something that's just unbelievable. And to think that would have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, would people just say, no, it wouldn't. But it's happening today. And unfortunately, some the players in politics, rather than trying to placate this issue, to switch it off, they have stoked the fires of anti-Semitism by being sort of
But that's
half,
my point.
like the Greens standing
That's
at the
my
front.
point.
It's
the politicians who fail, but it's the free speech of everyone else that is then affected by it. They just didn't do their job. And they still aren't stepping up to the mark, in my opinion, the Labor Party. Certainly the Greens aren't. I mean, we are being made to pay for the failures of political leadership in this country. I think it's disgraceful. And they're actually boasting about the laws that they're imposing on us. The government, in the meantime, Barnaby, I think a Swiftie is being played in my view. The government has pulled its nature positive bill. You know, this is includes new laws for an even tougher environmental protection authority with even tougher laws, to protect the environment and Aboriginal heritage and all that. They pulled it, but only until we get to vote, and then they'll probably try to bring it back. Have a listen to this exchange today.
Does she still support the introduction of a federal EPA, including in Western Australia?
The Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act 1999 is 20 years old and needs modernising to ensure Australia can meet current and future environment and heritage protection challenges.
What's going on here, as if I didn't know, Barnaby?
It's the acceleration of socialism, of basically taking assets out of the private hands and vesting them into the government without payment. So when you invest an asset into the community without payment, there's a word for it. It's called communism. And they'll dress it up however you like in a Giorgio Armani suit with a flash tie from your best shop. But it's still communism. It's the communal ownership of what was formerly private assets. And the way they do it, listeners, is by incremental caveat after caveat after caveat of what was formerly the free use of your privately paid asset for which you spent a lot of time of your life at the bank, getting loans and making sure, then going to work as a wage slave to try and pay off. See, if people say that they have more authority over your land than you do, more authority over your asset than you do, then basically they own it and you don't. And so these things, that they always use this nomenclature, this sort of magnificent nomenclature. Wind farms, I mean, they're not farms, are they? They're structures, they're swindle factories. And renewables, well, they're not. They're independent power. And nature repair bill. And when you go, what you have is more bureaucrats, more public servants, more caveats over your private asset. And it must be also fought against by people in urban Australia, because remember, what they start taking off people off the land ultimately becomes another intrusion on your private rights in Australia.
Nature positive bill, humans negative. They should just add that little caveat right there. Barnaby Joyce, thank you for your time.
Always a pleasure, Andrew.